Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. Today we will be exploring grammar, specifically focusing on Unit 2, which is about influential people. I'm excited to share this with you. Our Mega Goal 3.1 will guide us through the key concepts. On this first slide, I just want to give you a quick overview. We'll introduce the topic, outline what we'll cover, and get ready for an engaging session. Let's get started. All right, on this slide, we're focusing on 4 key areas to help you master the use of grammatical rules. First, we need to differentiate between used to and be used to because they often cause confusion. Remember, used to talks about past habits or states that no longer happen, while be used to shows that you're accustomed to something. Next, we will practice applying these rules through exercises, which is essential for internalizing them. Moving on, we'll look at how to use would for repeated actions in the past, helping us express habits or routines that happened regularly before. Finally, we'll explore how to use was we're going to with the future in the past, which is a useful way to talk about intentions or plans that were set before but may not have been realized. Throughout this lesson, our goal is to clarify these concepts so you can use them confidently in your speaking and writing. Today, I want to talk about a useful way to describe habits or routines from the past that we no longer do. We use the phrase used to for this purpose. When we say used to, we're referring to activities or behaviors that happened repeatedly in the past, but now they are no longer part of our lives. For example, I might say, I used to play soccer every weekend, meaning I played regularly in the past, but I don't do that anymore. It's important to remember that used to helps us highlight the difference between past habits and our current situation. So, whenever you want to talk about something you did regularly before but have stopped, used to is the perfect choice. This concept connects to our overall theme of discussing past habits and how they shape our experiences. Now let's take a closer look at how we use used to with the infinitive. When we talk about habits or states in the past, we often say used to plus the base form of the verb. For example, I might say, I used to study English every year. But here's an important point. When we omit the D from used to in questions and negatives, we just say used to. So the structure is used to plus the base verb for affirmative sentences, like she used to live in Saudi Arabia. For negative sentences, we say she didn't used to live in Saudi Arabia. And for questions, it's did she used to live in Saudi Arabia? Notice how we drop the D in used when forming questions and negatives. This form is mainly used to describe a continual action or state that was true in the past but no longer is. And it's important to remember that used to emphasizes that these actions or states were habitual or regular, not just a one-time event. So, in summary, used to helps us talk about past routines or situations that we've now left behind, with this slight change in form when we turn it into questions or negatives. Today, I want to talk about a phrase you might already be familiar with, be used to. It's a common way to express that something has become familiar or habitual to us. When we say we're used to something, we're indicating that we've gotten used to a situation, activity, or environment over time. It's like saying we no longer find it strange or difficult because it has become part of our daily routine. So, understanding how to use be used to correctly is really useful, especially when talking about habits or changes in our comfort level. It helps us communicate how we adapt to new circumstances or how long it takes for us to feel comfortable with something. This concept ties into our overall theme of language and communication, showing how we describe our experiences and adjustments in everyday life. All right, let's look at how we form questions and negative and affirmative sentences with be plus, used to plus a noun or gerund. First, the question form. We start with the verb be, which could be am, is, or are depending on the subject. Then, we add used to and follow with a noun or a gerund, which is a verb ending in ing. For example, is she used to shopping every week? Now, for negatives, we add not after the be verb. So, she isn't used to shopping every week. And for affirmatives, it's straightforward. She is used to shopping every week. It's important to remember that be plus used to plus noun or gerund is a way to express familiarity or habit with something. This structure is very useful in talking about routines or things we're accustomed to. So keep in mind, question forms start with am, is, or are followed by used to, then the noun or gerund. And for negatives, just add not, and for affirmatives, keep it simple with be plus used to. Understanding this structure helps us communicate habits and familiarity clearly and accurately. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. So, to summarize the key differences between used to and would, let's start with used to. Used to can be used for pretty much everything related to past habits and states. That includes repeated actions, ongoing states, and habits that you had in the past. It's quite versatile in describing things that used to happen regularly or used to be true. On the other hand, would is more limited in its usage. It's primarily used to talk about repeated actions in the past, especially those that were habitual or routine. But it doesn't really work for describing past states or situations. So the main takeaway here is that used to is your go-to for all kinds of past habits and states, while would is specifically for habitual past actions. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding these nuances helps us communicate more clearly about past routines and behaviors, especially when we want to emphasize repetition. Today, I want to talk about how we use used to and would to describe past situations. Used to is typically used when we want to talk about a situation that was true in the past, but it's not necessarily habitual. For example, I might say, I used to live in London 3 years ago. This means I lived in London at that time, but I don't anymore. Now, some people might wonder if they can also say, I would live in London 3 years ago, and the answer is no. Would is not used to describe a one-time situation from the past. Instead, would is used to talk about actions that happened regularly or repeatedly in the past. For instance, I would drink coffee every morning means that drinking coffee every morning was a habit. It's important to note that in this context, would and used to mean the same thing talking about past habits. However, used to is more common for describing past states or situations, while would emphasizes repeated actions. So, to sum up, used to talks about past situations, and would talks about past habits, and they can often be used interchangeably when discussing repeated actions. This helps us clearly communicate what used to be true, or what we used to do regularly in the past. Let's take a closer look at some common expressions related to familiarity and habits. On this slide, we're focusing on how we talk about being accustomed to something or not. First, you'll notice the phrase, student's book, p. 22. This is just a reference to where you can find more examples in the textbook. Now, moving on to the key points. Isn't used to and wasn't used to are ways to express that someone is not accustomed to a certain situation or activity. For example, if someone just moved to a new country, they might say, I isn't used to the climate, meaning they haven't gotten used to it yet. On the other hand, is used to indicates that someone is familiar with or accustomed to something. For instance, she is used to waking up early means waking up early is a normal part of her routine now. The phrase used to without the is or was is often used to talk about past habits or routines that are no longer happening. For example, I used to play football every weekend, meaning I played regularly in the past but don't anymore. It's also important to notice the difference between used to and is used to. The former refers to past habits, while the latter refers to current familiarity. Recognizing these distinctions helps us communicate more accurately about habits and adjustments over time. Connecting this to our overall theme, understanding these expressions allows us to describe how people adapt or struggle to adapt to new environments or routines, something that's very relevant in language learning and cultural exchange. On this slide, we're focusing on how to talk about a past plan or prediction that didn't actually happen. When we say, past plan not carried out, we're referring to situations where someone had a plan or expectation in the past, but it didn't come to fruition. For example, I might say, I was going to visit my cousins, but they came to visit me instead. Here, I had the intention or plan to visit my cousins, but that plan didn't happen because they visited me first. Another example is, it was going to rain, but suddenly the sun appeared. This shows a prediction that, based on the weather, it was expected to rain, but the weather changed unexpectedly. The key grammatical structure here is, was were plus going to plus base form of a verb. This construction is used in two main ways. First, to express a prediction made in the past, and second, to describe a plan that was supposed to happen but didn't. So when you hear was going to or were going to, think about whether someone predicted something or had a plan that, for various reasons, didn't happen. This helps us convey past intentions and expectations clearly. Now let's look at some examples of how we use was going to, and we're going to talk about future plans or intentions that didn't happen. For instance, in the first example, he was going to run in the race, but he didn't feel well. Here, we see that he planned to participate, but his health prevented him from doing so. Similarly, we were going to drive the new car, but we were too nervous, shows an intention that was postponed because of nerves. Moving on, she was going to attend that university, but she didn't, indicates a plan that changed, possibly due to other circumstances. Then, I was going to ask you to go out tonight, but you weren't home, highlights a missed opportunity because the person wasn't available. Another example is he was going to pay for dinner, but he lost his credit card, which demonstrates how unforeseen events can prevent us from following through with plans. Finally, we were going to watch a film tonight, but we were too tired, shows how fatigue can alter our plans. The key point here is that was going to, and we're going to, are used to express intentions or plans in the past that, for various reasons, didn't happen. Recognizing this helps us understand how to talk about unrealized plans or expectations, which is an important aspect of expressing ourselves clearly and accurately in English. All right, for this final slide, we're looking at the homework assignment, which is on workbook page 232. Exercise C. This is a great way to reinforce what we've covered today. I want to encourage you to review the key concepts we've discussed, especially how they connect to the bigger picture of our overall theme. When working through the exercise, pay close attention to the details and try to apply the principles we've talked about. Remember, the goal here is to deepen your understanding and solidify the skills you've gained. So, take your time, think critically about each question, and see how everything fits together. This practice will help make these ideas more tangible and easier to recall in real-world situations. Thanks for your attention, and I look forward to seeing how you approach the homework.